All right, let's dive into one of the most intense moments from Echoes of the Blood Harvest. We're talking about the final, desperate stand in the town of Apfeldern. This wasn't just any battle. The heroes here were up against an enemy that, and I mean this literally, fed on defeat.
So, picture this. The battle's been going on for hours. The town square? It's just a mess of smoke and blood. It looks like, just maybe, the good guys are about to pull off a win, and then, boom, the real enemy shows its hand. This is where things get really, really scary.
So, Section 1, The Dead Rise Again, the Necromancer's Gambit. Now you might be thinking, okay, it's a bunch of gnolls, right? But no, not even close. What the defenders of Apfeldern were up against was something way more terrifying. It was like a self-fueling engine of death, all powered by this really twisted, unique kind of necromancy.
Okay, let's really get into how this worked, because it's horrifyingly clever. So first, the Necromancer raises its own fallen soldiers, right? Green energy, the whole deal. But here's the twist. These animated gnolls, they're basically just puppets. They're not meant to win. When you cut one down, that's not a loss for the Necromancer. In fact, it's a win. All that green energy that was keeping the puppet moving, it shoots right back to the caster. It heals them. It makes them stronger. It's not just magic. It's a mind game. Every single win for the heroes, every zombie they took down, was just making the main boss more powerful. I mean, how on earth do you fight something like that?
So, yeah, how do you beat an enemy like that? Well, when you're facing something that seems impossible, you need an absolutely extraordinary response. And that brings us to our next section, Heroes of Apfeldern, a coordinated defense. The only reason the tide turned was because a few key people worked together just perfectly.
And the whole counterplay starts from up high. We've got Talinor the Elven Ranger. He's on the rooftops, using them to his advantage. Right? He kicks a zombie gnoll out of his way and then, just like that, lets an arrow fly. Perfect shot. It hits the Necromancer down in the square. It's not a killing blow, but it's that crucial first hit that throws the whole enemy plan off kilter.
Meanwhile, down on the ground, things are looking grim. The bard, Thane, he takes a bad hit. He's down. But then, with a little help from the druid Cedric, he pops this, well, it's an enchanted piece of candy, and gets back up with this crazy surge of power. He just unleashes this thunderous blow that completely shatters a zombie gnoll. And you know what happens? For the first time in what feels like forever, the defenders, they cheer. That one moment, it put hope back on the menu.
And that's the opening they needed. Seizing on that flicker of hope, the two samurai, Okazaki and Roberto, they just go all in. They become this absolute wall of steel, putting constant, relentless pressure on the Necromancer. They're the front line, and every single strike forces the robed gnoll back, wearing it down, and creating that one final opening for the team.
And here it is. This is the moment it all comes together. You've got the Necromancer wounded by Talinor's arrow from above, you've got it exhausted from Okazaki and Roberto's assault on the ground, and that's when the wizard, Calypso, steps up on the rooftops. She literally gathers the storm in her hands and just unleashes this massive bolt of lightning. It strikes true, tears right through the gnoll and its staff, and just like that, the dark magic is broken. For good.
Okay, Section 3, A Town Victorious, the celebration of survival. You know, after that final crack of lightning, silence. And in that silence, all the chaos, all the fear, it just washes away, and it's replaced by this huge, overwhelming wave of relief. The fight was over. Apfeldern had survived.
Apfeldern stood. I mean, it's such a simple phrase, right? But think about what it means. Against an enemy that literally got stronger every time they fought back. This town and its defenders, they held the line. They were still standing.
And we can actually put a number on that victory, which makes it even more real. The story tells us that every single person who stayed to fight, the 15 villagers and the 12 crystal guards, they all made it. That's 27 people who looked at impossible odds and refused to give up their home.
So that night, the fires in town weren't burning buildings down. They were for a celebration. And right in the middle of all the music and relief, there's this really touching moment. The town blacksmith, Jeremiah, he comes up to Thane, the bard, and gives him a lute. But it's not just any lute, it belonged to Bokfinian, a hero from the Crystal Keepers who had fallen. It's this beautiful passing of the torch moment, you know? A sign that even when you win, you don't forget the people who came before.
But the story doesn't stop there, which brings us to our final section, the season's true harvest, a disturbing discovery. Because after the party's over, a really big question is just hanging in the air.
Where did this incredibly organized army of gnolls even come from? The heroes knew they had to find the source. And what they found, well, it changed everything.
They didn't waste any time either. After just one day of rest, they were on the move. They traveled for 12 straight days, and you can bet that was a tense journey. But finally they found it, the Gnolls' stronghold. It was a network of caves, and inside, that's where the real truth about the attack was hiding.
And this is where the bottom drops out. The heroes are expecting, some gross, primitive den, what you'd expect from savages, right? But what they actually find is a fully supplied, well-organized base of operations. This wasn't just some random raid, this was a planned military operation.
And the proof was just everywhere. There were stacked crates full of weapons and armor, and get this, they were marked with the symbol of the Crystal Archive. In the back of the cave, there's this humming, unstable rift in reality. But maybe the most chilling part? The carvings on the cave walls. They didn't show the Gnolls conquering this land, they showed them arriving here, like they were sent.
And it gets worse. Tucked away in one of those crates, they found another piece of this dark puzzle. 7 freshly made bloodstones. We don't know exactly what they're for, but finding them hints at a goal that's way more sinister than just burning down a town. What exactly were these guys harvesting?
And then they found it. The smoking gun. Sacks of gold. Nearly 10,000 pieces. That's a huge payment. Next to the money, there's a note, and it's sealed with wax. And on that seal is a clear, unmistakable symbol, the mark of the hand. So now it all clicks into place. The Gnolls didn't just show up, they were armed by someone, they were paid by someone, and they were directed by someone.
So yeah, Alpadarin survived the blood harvest, but the story leaves us with this one chilling line. The season was not yet over. That just completely reframes everything, doesn't it? This victory wasn't the end of a war. It was just the first battle in a much bigger conflict that no one even knew was happening.
Which brings us to the final, haunting question we're left with. The attack on Apfeldern? It wasn't random. It was a well-funded, carefully planned proxy attack. The Gnolls? They were just the weapon. So the real question is, who is the hand that's pulling all the strings?